Hi and welcome to the next presentation. My name is Christer Linde. I'm Global Co-Head of Research. And the next presentation will be Fishbrain, and we have the CEO, Johan Attby, with us. So Johan, welcome, and please do your presentation.
Thank you so much. So hello everyone, my name is Johan Attby, CEO and co-founder of Fishbrain. And before I dive into the presentation, I wanted to give you a little bit on the backstory behind Fishbrain, because there's always a story behind every company, right? So start with I've been an entrepreneur for the last 15 something years, but I actually started up my career in academia. So I got a master's in mathematics and physics, and then I went straight for a PhD in AI. Note that this is long before the hype, the AI hype. So I actually did it for a genuine interest in mathematics. But so I spent some time at the started in Sweden, but I spent some time at the Santa Fe Institute in New Mexico, which is this fantastic place where they have 3 or 4 Nobel Prize winners. And over there, I got super excited because looking at these professors, they weren't just great in their area of expertise, but some of them also started a couple of companies, and some of them quite successfully. And I was 20 something. Of course, I was super young and naive. So I thought that I could do the same, which of course I couldn't. The company I started did good. My career in academia ended right there. So started the company, raised venture capital, started company in Sweden, moved to Silicon Valley in 2007. Then we got some good momentum, and the business was acquired by an American company in 2011. And after the acquisition, I was locked in for a year and a half, and I knew I didn't want to stay with the buyer because it was one of those huge, large companies. And I'm an entrepreneur. I really like, especially the phase we're in right now at Fishbrain, where it's about growth, core monetization is working. But how do you scale that? Not 1-2% per year, but 50-100% per year. I think that's the most exciting phase. So I did some angel investing. I did speaking gigs, joined boards, was advisor to a bunch of companies. But frankly, I spent a fair bit of time thinking about what should be my next company. And not a big surprise given my background in mathematics, I think in numbers. So I started to think about what are the next macro trends that I believe in. And of course, it's not that I have a crystal ball that you at ABG don't have, or investors like Greylock, Sequoia, Goldman Sachs, but you have to believe in something. And I came to 2 conclusions that I think are pretty obvious today, but that wasn't the case 7 years ago when we started Fishbrain. Number 1 is if you have a passion for something, doesn't matter what it is, you will have a much better engagement if you're in a group of like-minded versus a group of friends. Because if you look at general social platforms like Facebook or Instagram or like TikTok these days, you don't get any good engagement if you post something that's very narrow, very specific. Those platforms are designed for content like kittens and party pictures and travel pictures, content that everyone can engage with. Second, I'm a huge believer in, I think there are a lot of untapped opportunities around crowdsourcing of data, especially using this mobile device. And of course, like Facebook, they do it for targeting ads, which is a great business proposition. Just look at the quarterly report if you doubt that. But personally, I'm much more like companies like Waze, where you crowdsource traffic information and you deliver that as a fantastic service for the customers. So long story short, over to Fishbrain. So I wrote a blog post saying that I thought there would be an opportunity for vertical social networks, and especially for the big hobbies where you can actually take the data, crowdsource the data, and turn that as a service for the customers. And this was published by one of those Silicon Valley tech blogs, Pando Daily. And I got a ton of feedback. I got feedback from Mark Andreessen himself at Andreessen Horowitz. I got feedback from the folks over at Sequoia, Greylock, basically all investors in Facebook saying, hey, we strongly believe in this. So I decided this is what I want to do. I looked at the number of verticals, but pretty quickly honed in on fishing. First of all, I stumbled upon an article, I think it was in Forbes, listing the world's 10 largest hobbies. And guess what? Sport fishing, this is by spending. There are more people running than fishing, but by spending, sport fishing is the world's by far largest hobby. It's very global, big in the States, big in Europe, big in Asia. So, and also when it comes to fishing, it's the perfect vertical for a social network, because fishing is almost 100% about bragging. Very few people actually keep their catch. They practice what's called catch and release. So already today, they take a picture or increasingly so even a video before they throw the fish back in the water again. So they do want to share their experience in fishing. And on the data side, the fact is, if you ask 100 avid anglers when, where, and how to fish, you will get exactly 100 different answers. And I thought that can be true, right? Because this is like ways. One person can only drive that much. One person can only fish that much. So if you crowdsource a huge data of sport fishing data, make it very granular, you can probably, using machine learning, give anglers a much better fishing forecast than the best avid angler in the world. And fast forward 7 years, this is our key selling point behind the paywall. So that's basically the backstory of Fishbrain. Next slide, please. And so briefly describing what we do today. So there's anglers, we're not changing behavior here because anglers do take a picture or a video, but we have streamlined that process. So we automatically gather, I think, around 25 parameters when anglers do that. From the image, we can automatically, using image recognition, we can identify the species automatically. And this is something we co-developed with Google, and they featured us on their keynote presentation recently. And then we automatically get the weather conditions. Was it sunny? Was it rainy like today? Wind speed, wind direction, tide, moon phase, current, water temperature, wind speed, everything. And then we deliver the bite time, which is the fishing forecast. Then there's a social layer. Anglers love to engage with each other. So there's a lot of discussions between anglers on the platform. We have more utility features like depth contours. We have exact fishing spots. We have point of interest. And we also have a lot of gear data, because when users log their catches, they tag it that caught is using this reel, this rod, this line, this lure. So we aggregate an enormous amount of sport fishing data than we use for gear recommendations. And now recently we also launched a commerce opportunity marketplace on top of that. Will I get to in a bit. Next slide, please. And this is what makes me super excited about Fishbrain, because we really sit at the intersection of three markets that are massive in themselves. There's the social side, where of course you have the general platforms, the Facebook, the Instagrams of the world. And there are now utility apps worth quite a bit north of $1 billion. You have a Strava that's doing it for cycling. You have a Headspace, our neighbor over here, Spotify right across the street from Fishbrain, done a fantastic utility service delivering music. House is valued at $4 or $5 billion. They built a community for home remodeling, decoration with utility features and a marketplace. And on the marketplace side, you have companies like Wayfair, Amazon, Etsy, Farfetched, and a lot of other companies building hugely, enormously valuable marketplaces. And we are right in the middle, and we are delivering on all three of them. So the opportunity is really big. Next one. And speaking about the market, I told you this is the world's largest hobby. Here are some numbers. In the US alone, there's 50 million Americans that fish every year. And the market is a $50 billion market, which is, put the number in perspective, the global music industry is a $20 billion industry, which is roughly the market cap of Spotify. So it's huge, and this is in the US only. And it's also quite frequent. Anglers fish on average 20 times per year. So this is a quite frequent hobby. And there's a lot of engagement. It's also big in Europe. It's big in Russia. It's big in China, Australia, in South America. So it's a very, very global hobby as well. Next slide, please. And this is also a macro trend that it's definitely in our favor, because if you look at sport fishing 20, 30 years ago, it was very male dominated and skewed slightly towards the older people. Today, it's totally different. There's huge growth in women and younger people. When I was a kid, it was absolutely not cool to say that you were, I would say, outdoors in general and definitely not fishing. And brands like Fjällräven, that wasn't a cool brand. Today, it's completely different. Kids, they talk about their outdoor adventures. Fjällräven is, again, a very, very hip brand. And of course, that's really good for us, because they are avid users of apps, social media, etc., etc. Next slide, please. We talked about data a little bit, but Fishbrain is an enormous data gathering machine. And I think this is important because there are so many things we can do with that data. Today we get the catch information, the weather, the water, we get user behavior, we get the gear data, we get the social graph, the fishing graph, and we use it for the bite time, which is the fishing forecast. We work now very, very closely with researchers and agencies and states around the sustainable fishing. So we work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for around endangered species in Florida. We work with Florida Wildlife Commission around invasive species. So there's a lot we contribute from an ESG perspective here, which nothing I thought about, frankly, when I started Fishbrain 7 years ago. But I'm super proud today that we actively contribute to a sustainable fishing. And now we're working more, I'll come to the commerce side in a bit, and also how we work with the brands in the industry. Next slide, please. And when we start there, when you build a vertical social network, the market dynamics is really, really brutal because there will be only one winner. So the first 3 years, even though I started the company here in Stockholm, we decided to go after the US market, the biggest market first. We didn't even launch in Sweden first. We went after the US market. And then we didn't monetize for the first 3-4 years because we knew we needed to be the first one to hit the tipping point, a critical mass of users. Because we were not the first, like Spotify wasn't the first music service. We were not the first fishing app. So it took about 3-4 years. Then we saw that we are now accelerating away from competitors. We were the ones hitting the tipping point first. And you can see now that we grow 10 times as fast. We're 10 times as big, and we grow even faster than 10 times as fast as our competitors. And all 3 of them wanted us to acquire them, but we haven't seen a reason because our growth is good without M&A in this, and when it comes to direct competitors. Next one, please. And Fishbrain is not a one-man band, and so it's me, but I have a very strong management team that's helped me execute on this opportunity. We have Azar with a background from 10-something years at Kinnevik, so Metro, and Rickard, he was going through leading their tech side through their IPO, so he has IPO experience and been at Spotify for quite some time. So I have a very strong management. I can mention Lisa Kennelly because the company is based here. We target the US the US market. Swedes in general suck at marketing. I personally suck at marketing. So of course we need an American to run marketing, and Lisa is really brilliant when it comes to marketing. So we have I think 100 people in the company and at least 15 Americans in the company, which is important because that's our core demographics. Next one, please. And coming over a little bit to the financials, how we make money. And today we run Fishbrain. We have 2 revenue streams. We start with the subscription, and we run with a freemium model, so it's free to download and start using Fishbrain. But if you want to have access to some features, they are behind the paywall. So that's one revenue stream. A second that we launched in end of 2019, it's Marketplace. So users can now buy fishing gear directly on our platform. And I'll get to that in a bit. Next slide, please. Next. So here, starting with the freemium model. So it's some features we put behind the paywall. Basically, everything social is free. Logging your catches, all the social engagement, that's free today. But if you want to have access to the crowdsourced data, the positions, the bait recommendations, the fishing forecast, etc., that's behind the paywall. And it's priced at $10 per month, and you get a discount if you sign up for a quarterly or an annual plan. And out of an user base of 1.2 million monthly active users, we have 130,000 paying subscribers. And if you look at freemium models in general, that is very strong conversions because most freemium models, they operate around 3-4% conversion from a free but active user into paying subscriber. So we have strong conversion. So for us, it's more how do we continue to scale and grow the top line. Next one, please. And here, looking at 2020, we grew business around 50% in subscription revenue in 2020. And you can see on the subscriber base is we are heavily focused on the US market. We have 88% of our subscribers are in the US. So, and we still have ways to go in the States, because I told you that it's 50 million Americans fish every year. And we have maybe 5 million of them registered on the platform, 1 million active. So there's huge room for us to continue to grow on the US market. But of course, my vision for this company is to be the global winner in the sport fishing space. But we have solid growth, 50% plus in the North American market right now. But we will start with global expansion soon. Next slide, please. And something also we did in, not only did we have good growth in 2020, this is also something that we significantly improved, because the first time in the company, it was basically all about growth, less about profitability, which means that we have maneuvered that LTV, lifetime value over CAC, has been trailing around 1.0, meaning that if we spend $1 on marketing, we made sure that we recovered that through the subscription, but no additional contribution. But last year, we started with focusing a bit more on our profitability, and we actually put some free features and put them behind the paywall. And we went from LTV over CAC trailing around 1.0 to 2.8. So it was a huge improvement in 2020 on we are not yet profitable, but our path to profitability. So now we have strong unit economics. So we want to continue now to scale the top line. Next slide, please. Next. And this is absolutely not rocket science, because if we have those gear data, we have more gear data than Amazon, more rating and reviews, catches with the equipment tag. It's a pretty good commerce opportunity. And also when you look at fishing in general, it's an industry that's trailing behind a lot of other industries, but growth on e-commerce now, it's only 15% today in e-commerce, but it's growing now very, very rapidly. And if you ask me, you can see that furniture and home furnishing is roughly twice as big online as fishing equipment, percentage-wise. And if you ask me, it's much easier to buy your reel, your rod, your line online than your next bed or sofa. So just that this is a very sport fishing market. It's traditional, very old school. You have two dominant brick and mortar retailers, Bass Pro and Cabela's, but the growth is really online, and we are rightly positioned to take advantage of that. Next one, please. So we built a marketplace, and now we have over 70 sellers on the marketplace already. We have over 80,000 SKUs products on the market. And we've done this in 1 year. So there's a shop on the web, there's a shop on the app with all these brands. We're working on social shopping, we're working on personalization. It's still very early days for us here, but we're off to a great start when it comes to the marketplace. Next one, please. I think we can skip this in essence of time. Next one. And so here are some of the performance. So in end of 2019, and here are 2020 numbers. We get more orders. We increase AOV, average order value, and GMV, the sales on the platform, is starting to pick up pretty nicely on the platform. Next one, please. Next. And ending here, so last year we grew 43% in total on the subscription side. Growth is looking very, very strong for us in 2020. And basically that's the plan going forward, to continue to scale the subscription revenue between 50 and 100% per year. And we will start with globalization, expanding outside the US market. And then we will grow. The marketplace is recent for us, but this is now time for us to scale. There's a huge interest from the brands, the industry, to be on the platform, which is absolutely not a given when you start. But now we have 5 of the 10 leading brands are on the platform. We have a partnership with Pure Fishing. That's the world's largest fishing tackle manufacturer with 10% global market share. Last week, we inked a deal with Garmin, the leading manufacturer of marine electronics. So there's a big interest there. So we definitely want to continue to scale that part, scale the subscription business, which we've done now for 3-4 years. We did $9.6 million in subscription revenue last year. So continue to scale that. And one thing I should mention is we have fantastic gross margin, and we are not like a Readly or a Storytel or a Spotify, because what we put behind the paywall is access to crowdsourced data. So that basically means that the cost for our content is zero. We are on the app stores though, so we have to send 30% to Apple, to Tim Cook at Apple and to Google, but that's okay when we have no other costs. It's basically 70% gross margin on the subscription side. On the marketplace side, we take the transaction, which is very, very important. We own the customer experience. This is not an affiliate model where we send this off to a retailer. They transact on Fishbrain, which means that we do have their credit card information. But we take 15% commission on all transactions that are generated on our platform. So it will take a bit for GMV. It will grow fast, but the revenue is 15% of GMV here. But very, very strong gross margin. So next one. I will end here. So we've historically, we started this end of 2020 and got some really good angels on board first, and then Northzone and Industrifonden invested. Then we got some good investors, VCs into our Series B. SoftBank, very happy to have SoftBank. They've been a strong supporter of the company. Another interesting one is B Capital, because one of the main LPs in that fund is Facebook co-founder Eduardo Severin. And he's a huge believer in the unbundling of social. So he's been very, very highly engaged in Fishbrain. It's been tremendously helpful for us as a business. And which is not on this slide, but right a couple of weeks ago or a month ago or so, we closed our pre-IPO round. It was $31 million, led by ABG here. So that was our pre-IPO round. So now we are scaling up. We were 75 people before. Now we are scaling up the team and start to execute. Because when I said we are going after 3 massive markets, it's hard to do with 75 people. So now we are scaling up the organization so we can better execute on all 3 of them. I will end there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Johan. Very interesting presentation. We have time for a few questions here. First of all, as you said, you have launched a marketplace. And if you zoom out a few years forward, where do you see this largest potential revenue-wise? Is that in the subscription part of the business model, or is in the marketplace? And adding to that, in the marketplace, if I understand this right, you are not selling ads on the platform. But can you split that and give some thinkings about the 2 sources of revenues?
It's a very good question, and we look at if I extrapolate now for 3 years forward, I think the subscription revenue side and the marketplace revenue will be equal in size. From a GMV perspective, marketplace will overtake subscription faster than that, of course, because it's 50% commission. But we believe in 3 years they will be equally big revenue streams. And I always get the question, do these 2 revenue streams cannibalize? Why don't you give the subscription away, everything away from free? Then you will have more users, more engaged user base. I don't think they cannibalize that much because, again, if people that are anglers in the audience, you know how much money you spend on fishing? There's a reason this is the world's largest hobby. And I think people would be happy to pay $10 per month for something that they are passionate about. So I don't think the subscription will actually cannibalize that much on the marketplace. So I'm a huge fan of actually having both revenue streams. And to answer your second question, no, we don't do ads on the platform. We with one exception, because one of the large leading insurance companies in the US, Progressive, they gave us such a great deal, such a good CPM. So we tried it out in 2020, and it had no negative consequences to the engagement or the retention and stuff like that. So I'm not ruling out that we will launch ads as a revenue stream, but we currently don't have that in our financial projections.
Okay, thank you, Johan. And looking, as you said, you have taken the leadership position in this segment, fishing, and you have a lot of opportunities. But where do you see the largest challenges to achieve your goals? Is it finding the right staff, or what? Can you help us a bit there?
I think when being a company with 100 people, it's hard to be good in 2 revenue streams. So I think your question was really good. So I think one challenge for us is how do we make a great utility and a great marketplace at the same time? How do you design a customer experience where you can actually have both the social side, the utility, and the marketplace? But I think what we built now looks promising, and others have done it, like a house, for example. So it's definitely has been done. Then one thing that we haven't really started on yet is, which I mentioned, is geographical expansion. At some point, we are far away from that, but at some point we will saturate the US market. And if you look at, I mentioned Strava, which was this app for cycling, which is, I think Sequoia and TCV just invested $150 million, $1 billion plus valuation. They did geographical expansion much earlier than we've done. And as you know, when I say there are strong network effects, these network effects are local. So it doesn't, just because we won the US market, doesn't automatically make us the winner in like a China or a Japan or Brazil or Russia or France or Germany. So I think that is something we need to invest in, geographical expansion, and also finding local talent that can actually drive this geographical expansion for us.
Thank you, Johan. The time is running out, and I had one last question. I think we don't have that, but we call this a pre-IPO seminar, so we're looking forward to your IPO in the future. So thank you much, Johan.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.